All right, Stephen A., are the Bengals done this season?
I think so. I personally think so. I understand that only 2 games. I mean, when you think about the Ravens and the Chiefs atop the AFC, only 2 games separate the next 12 teams in the AFC. So one would say that's a reason to believe it's not over. But I'm saying it's over because of the health of Joe Burrow. He had the calf injury earlier on. He walked into the game with something on his wrist, which is why the NFL is looking into what was the status of his health prior to the game. Did y'all know he was hurting this much and you still let him go out there, that kind of thing? Ryan, you can speak to that a hell of a lot better than me, both you and Bart, especially with your association with the NFL Players Association, so I'm not going to get into all of that. What I will simply say is this. The Bengals go where Joe Burrow takes them. And when Joe Burrow is that hurt and he can't perform, again, I have been making the argument, you don't get healthier as the season progresses. You usually get worse, and your attrition kicks in when it comes to the National Football League. And because that's the reality, it affects Mixon, it affects Chase, it affects Higgins when he's out there, even though he's missed the last 2 games. It affects Boyd. It affects even their defense, because obviously you'll need to be more opportunistic if Joe Burrow isn't out there maximizing the opportunities the offense may have available to them. So I look at it from that perspective, and I say, considering how competitive, highly competitive the AFC conference is, I think that it's finished because of the health of being a 5-5 team and the health of Joe Burrow being such a huge question mark.
It was going to be tough sledding regardless, right? They have arguably, if not top 5, the hardest remaining schedule. They still have to play Jacksonville, the Colts, Minnesota, who's surging. They get the Pittsburgh Steelers on a short week with a backup quarterback potentially, or on a long week, 10 days. I don't think when you talk about a sprained wrist, a sprained wrist is one thing. We've all had sprained wrists. That looked like nerve issues when you talk about not being able to grip the ball and trying to throw the ball. That's not a sprained wrist. That's something so much more severe. You talk about a team that's built around their quarterback. They are not, in this division, able to win, I believe, without Joe Burrow. They struggle with a compromised Joe Burrow. How are they going to play without Joe Burrow? Jake Browning, played well. I think he, he represented himself okay. But when you talk about now teams are going to start preparing for him, he's going to be on the scouting report. They're going to have tough sledding. It's an uphill battle for, the Cincinnati Bengals to get to the postseason. I think it's over with.
Is the trade deadline passed? Can they call Minnesota and see if Josh Dobbs is available?
No, they can't.
Because Josh Dobbs seems to be the only guy that can just jump in and play ball. I think it's over for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's not just about Joe Burrow's injury, but Joe Burrow's injury is the catalyst of the season being over. Think about the first 2 games when you had a compromised Joe Burrow. And the way this entire team looked, it wasn't just about the offense not functioning at a high level, but it was off a defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo's defense that wasn't the same as we've seen it down the stretch of the last 2 seasons. And then when you look at last night, the way that the entire complexion of the game changes when you lose a true franchise quarterback. When you talk about the elite of the elites, it's Patrick Mahomes, and the next name that's mentioned many times is Joe Burrow. So think about taking that guy away from a team that has been built around him. It's not about what you could do with Jake Browning. It's not about can you win a couple of games and get close to the playoffs because the 6th or the 7th seed has 9 or 10 wins. It's about winning Super Bowls with this team. It was about taking that next step. The last 2 years, you've been in the AFC Championship. 2 years ago, you were a drive away from winning the Super Bowl. And so now you start the season 0-2, not just in the conference, but the division. You're 1-5 in the conference. And this is the team that has to find ways to win against good football teams without the 2nd best quarterback in the world. It doesn't happen like that. Jamar Chase ain't the same. Tyler Boyd isn't the same. T. Higgins, when he gets back, isn't the same. Joe Mixon in the run game isn't the same because I got 8 in the box now because I'm not scared of you taking the top off of the defense with Jake Browning at quarterback. This is worst case scenario for the Cincinnati Bengals, who are already in a very tough spot.
As a side note, I'm wondering why. Listen, I'm not trying to throw any shade on Jake Browning. He's never started the game. Right. Obviously, he's been in about 4 games in his career, 2 games this year. I'm looking at him right now. You got 13 different NFL teams, okay, that have already used multiple starting quarterbacks this season. 5 teams have used 3 starting quarterbacks on the years: the Browns, the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Giants, the Falcons. So we look at it from that perspective, and we say to ourselves, okay, the backup has become a very, very big deal. Yeah. When you look at this cat in Minnesota, Minnesota and what he is doing. How the hell did you ever let him get out of Cleveland? How the hell did you ever let him get out of some of the places that he's been? You're just looking at things right now. You saw what happened in New York with Daniel Jones. He goes out, okay? Mm-hmm. Now we've got
Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito. I mean Danny DeVito. I mean Tommy DeVito. I mean,
but they had Tyrod Taylor.
They did have Tyrod Taylor, but it makes they got this excuse because Tyrod Taylor was there. But you're just wondering. You're the Cincinnati Bengals, and then I look, guys, and I'm looking at Jake. Let me go through Joe Burrow's injury history. 2020, torn rib cartilage. November 2020, torn ACL, MCL. Dislocated his finger in December 2021. Yeah. Sprained MCL in the Super Bowl, finished the game, of course. July 2023, training camp, carted off with a strained calf, and now Thursday night. When you see the injury histories of a Joe Burrow, how in God's name are you the Cincinnati Bengals when you know what your aspirations are, meaning a Super Bowl, because you know you've got the talent to pull it off, and you don't have a backup plan better than Jake Brown? Well,
here's the issue when you talk about the modern day NFL. Because they hedged themselves and hedged their bet on so many high-end players and spending so much money, bringing Orlando Brown Jr. in, right? You talk about these high-end backups, that's in the league, they cost money. They cost $5 to $8 million. So you're hedging your bet that these starters are going to stay healthy. That's why you look at, even with New York, that's why they stayed with Zach Wilson instead of going out and getting a backup, that was capable in case he got hurt, because you're saying, okay, well, this guy has been healthy for 5 years. So that's a problem that we have. We don't have enough good starters in the NFL that you don't want to be paying somebody that doesn't deserve $5 to $8 million, because that's going to stop you from paying your running back or that tight end that actually plays and contributes. They're dependent on the stars staying healthy, especially with the new rules. But the reality is that everybody has seen, whether it's Lamar Jackson, the stars, that it's the likelihood of your starter giving you start an entire season is 0 to 0.
I'm just looking at Ryan Clark. I'm just looking at these NFL teams right here.
Ryan Tannehill's out there.
The standings and what have you. And I'm just looking at all of this, and I'm saying to myself, how many dudes in the NFL who start actually deserve to be starting for a franchise? I mean, now when you bring up what Bart just brought up, it's just an interesting thing. I'm throwing it. I'm not saying what or who. I'm asking you, RC, as you look at it. How many would you say don't even deserve to be a starter?
Desmond Ridder, no bueno.
Well, the thing is this, guys. The thing is this. Everybody who's starting deserves to be a starter, because in that case they wouldn't be. So that's the first thing. Because Bart made the point. We don't have 32 good starters, right? That's why there's always this line we draw. That's why there's always this line we draw between guys you can win because of and guys you have to win in spite of. Because there's always going to be a starter in this league that you're going to have to play around. You're going to have to say, don't turn the football over. We'll get you turnovers. We'll put you in field position. We'll run the clock, right? They're going to have those guys. You're going to have the Kenny Pickett's that you say, Kenny, go out and protect the ball. If you protect the ball, we can play good defense, which will give you an opportunity to win it in the end. And Kenny Pickett has been finding ways to get those game-winning drives. I believe it's 5 over the last 2 years. But people will look at Kenny Pickett and you look at the overall stats and you say, okay, this guy doesn't deserve to be a starter. And so you're going to look at these different teams. Desmond Ridder, who was replaced by Taylor Heineke. Ryan Tannehill, who's been replaced by Will Levis. All of these guys started the season as starters. And then eventually they move through and you realize they aren't good enough to get it done. Hell, Daniel Jones got $40 million a year, Stephen A. and Bart. And I don't think when we're looking at a good starter in the NFL that he is one. But the thing is, the pool, like Bart said, is so shallow. You have to have a guy, and you have to tab that guy, and you got to make him feel good, and you got to make him feel like the franchise is his, even though you know you're looking for the next best thing because he ain't it. And that's 10 to 12 teams in this league.
All right, I want to talk about something that Stephen A. Touched on earlier. So Adam Schefter is reporting that the NFL is investigating why the Bengals did not list Burrow in the injury report after posting a picture of him wearing a device on his wrist on Wednesday night. Is playing a potentially hurt Burrow a bad look for the Bengals, RC?
No, we all play hurt. There is 0 healthy people in the NFL right now. There is no guy that can say he's 100%. So, in no way is playing Burrow an issue. If Joe Burrow tells you he can get out on the field, he can grip the football, he can throw the football, you let Joe Burrow tell you that he can't. You let him show you that he's unable to do the job and handle the responsibilities and requirements of playing quarterback. And he is owed that. And when you give him the contract that you gave him, he owes the team that. And that's why Joe Burrow was out there. That's why they made sure to the last opportunity you were going to let him throw on the sideline. You were going to take him in the back and get him x-rays. You were going to do everything you could do to keep Joe Burrow on the field. Because when you pay a dude that much money, when you draft him number 1 overall, and he shows he is worth every bit of that, that's your bell cow. That's the way you win football games. And putting Jake Browning on the field is a last resort. So in no way is it wrong to put Joe Burrow on the field, especially when you watch him play the way he played until the moment he went out after throwing that touchdown to Joe Mixon.
Hold on, RC. Let me push back. You would have a very valid point that cannot be disputed in any way if it's the media. But if the National Football League is investigating the matter, what I'm asking a question here. The Players Association negotiates with the league. The league itself knows everything you just said. You've got former NFL players working in the league office. We all know that. The league itself runs the league. We know that. I'm asking you and Bart, I'm not disputing anything. I'm not qualified to dispute what you're saying. But one would surmise the NFL is. And if the NFL is investigating, then tell us why, if everything you just said is applicable.
First off, Christine didn't ask the question that way. Christine wasn't asking me about the investigation. I took the question as, if Joe Burrow is injured in any way, are you wrong for allowing him to play until he shows you that he can't?
No, I understand she didn't ask that, but I was just talking about your answer. I was responding to your answer.
You're asking about the injury report. See, because the way the injury report is if anybody is hampered in any way, if they're questionable, if they're doubtful, if they're limited at practice, you have to list them on the injury report. Right. And so when they saw Joe Burrow get off of the plane, or you saw him in the post with something on his wrist, that's to say that there's a pre-existing injury that is lingering from the last game. Go back to Patrick Mahomes being reported with an illness against the Denver Broncos. Patrick Mahomes was going to play, but you have to report the illness. Because why? This is how the betting lines are set. Right. This is how teams prepare to play games. That's what the injury report is. That's why there's always questions to Bill Belichick about the injury reports and about the different things going on with this depth chart, because teams are trying to prepare, and betting, which is huge in the NFL, even though they try to keep players from betting all the time, betting lines are set based on the injury report.
It's like my suit. It's a gray area, right? You talk about playing on
your suit is silver, but
it does look a little white on
you did say silver.
But the lights make them look white.
Right.
Well, the gray area is on a short week, you don't have to practice. You pretty much do glorified walking the entire time. So he doesn't have to throw the football the same way that he would throw the football typically in a game. So if you don't miss any practice time or any plays, then this is the nuance. And why, as a team, would you keep this off the scouting report? Because unlike hockey, where they just say lower body extremity or upper body extremity, they are specific in the NFL. And do you want to give your hated rival the information to say that my quarterback has a hurt wrist? No, you don't want to do that, because it's an advantage for the opponent, and then the opponent can take advantage of that. So if I have an opportunity as the Cincinnati Bengals not to disclose an injury, everybody's getting treatment on various things. You don't report everything, and as players, we don't report everything that's hurting us to the team. So they're going to investigate it, and I expect maybe a slap on the wrist. But it was a gray area with this because of the uniqueness of playing on a short week.
Well, the gray area, I believe, works in the favor of the Cincinnati Bengals because of the things you both just articulated. Just in the throes of competition and just over the mindset that you paid this guy this amount of money, and if he gives you any indication that he can go, you're going to let him go. Plus, you piggyback off of what I introduced, all the plethora of injuries that he's had throughout the years, and he's played through most of them. So the fact that he has a history of being injured but still going out there and performing is yet another excuse that the Cincinnati Bengals can lean on to justify why they played them last night. So you're absolutely right, RC. There's nothing to question about that. The only thing it can be is what you listed on the injury report, which is a violation of the rules according to the collective bargaining if you didn't follow the proper.
Absolutely.
Okay, ESPN Analytics gives the Bengals a 28% chance to make the playoffs.